Good afternoon, Your Highnesses, Excellencies and Dignitaries, members of the ABLF network and all of our wonderful guests here with us today. My name is Reshan Kotecha. I'm a policy and strategy specialist here in the UK, and I am delighted as ever to be here at the ABLF. I'm thrilled to be introducing and speaking to a really fascinating and incredible businessman, Bill Heinecke, who moved to Thailand in 1963, where he founded the Minor Group a few years later. Nearly 5 decades on since then, the group has grown substantially. It's got revenues of over $4 billion and is now a global company based on 3 key areas: restaurants, hotels, and hospitality. And if you aren't familiar with the Mint Group already, you will definitely know of some of its large brands, such as the Pizza Company, the Coffee Club, Benihana, Thai Express, Burger King, and many, many more. Bill serves as a chairman on the board of directors of Mint, and he's also an experienced entrepreneur and author, having written a book, The Entrepreneur: 25 Golden Rules for Global Business Managers. He also serves as the director of Indorama Ventures. So Bill, thank you so much for joining us today. It's a pleasure to get to know you, and I'm hoping we'll be able to talk a little bit more about your experiences beside Mint as well. So thank you for being with us.
Good. I'm very happy to be here.
Fantastic. I wanted to start off by asking you your thoughts on the vaccine, because of course we have a vaccine. It is being given out to people around the world, but of course, despite that, the road to recovery is going to be long and arduous. Given all your experiences, how do you think leaders can prepare themselves to lead their countries and organizations, given all the uncertainty around?
Well, I think, one of the very first things I talk about usually is don't panic. We often have these sort of crises. We've had many over the years, but this is certainly one of the most difficult ones that I've ever faced. All the other crises were more like a walk in the park. But having said that, I think we also have to act quickly in a crisis. And I feel that all too often people have a tendency not to move as quickly as they should. And in this particular crisis, one was it's very important to determine your priorities. I think that this was such a severe crisis for the tourism and the hospitality area that our first one was merely focus on survival. We had to make sure that we had sufficient funds and make sure that our teams were safe. And then we began to focus on how to conserve cash. And we stopped a lot of projects midstream to await the outcome of this crisis. And then finally, you've got to prepare to re-enter the war zone, you might say, as the market begins to recover. And certainly in certain parts of the world now, we can begin to see that recovery taking place.
And I want to pick up on, you've mentioned briefly there that, of course, you've seen other crises. And of course, you saw the immense destruction caused by the tsunami in 2004. You managed the group through the economic crisis of 2008. How did those experiences help you, if they did, to prepare for COVID-19 and the uncertainties around it?
Well, as you rightfully say, we've had a lot of crises to focus on leading up to this one. But we've always kept in mind the fact that when you go into a crisis, if you do it effectively, or if you prepare effectively, then you can emerge from that crisis a much stronger company. And so far, and we'll wait to see how we do in this one, but we've emerged from all the previous crises stronger. In this particular case, I've never seen a crisis which has caused us to lose. We lost about $700 million in the last fiscal year for us. So that was a pretty horrendous crisis, but we were one of the first to go back to the market, to our shareholders. We raised, in addition, another $500 million in capital, and we began to address the various issues that we saw. But first and foremost, I think we also kept in mind that our business depends very much on people, and so it's very critical to make sure you look after your people. And you're also going to rely on an awful lot of people globally. So you need to have confidence in your team.
And how have you managed that? Because of course, you mentioned people are so important. How do you empower your people? How have you managed the various challenges your teams have had in different countries around the world at different times? It's not like it's a uniform pandemic we've seen with all people affected at the same time in the same way.
That's very true. I think the problem here is that you probably begin first with a corporate culture. I think we have a very strong corporate culture within Minor. It's what we call a tribe culture, and it focuses on trying to empower our individuals to leave a legacy and develop a legacy as they work within the company. And secondly, we focus very heavily on entrepreneurship, and we encourage our managers around the world to be entrepreneurial in their solutions. And as you said, the different parts of the world are emerging from this crisis at different speeds, and we also entered the crisis at different speeds.
And so when you talk about the entering the pandemic, of course, we're now hoping to be leaving it, that light at the end of the tunnel. What leadership lessons are you going to take away, or would you have to share with other entrepreneurs, other businesses and other brands coming out of the pandemic?
Well, I think, first of all, it's going to be a very uneven ride out of the pandemic. I think as we're beginning to look at it, we see places like Australia, New Zealand, and even China. It's unlikely to see any inbound or outbound until 2022. So 2021 is still going to be very challenging. And but we do see light at the end of the tunnel. Certainly the Middle East, the Maldives, and now with Europe, Thailand, on the other hand, having weathered this crisis very well, is now entering a third wave. And it looks like it's going to be much more difficult than anything we faced earlier. And so we're now entering it rather late, although we've seen these third waves affect Hong Kong and other Asian countries, Taiwan, Singapore, and Malaysia, which are all continuing to be locked down.
And speaking of the ways, you mentioned some countries not allowing any incoming tourist traffic. Of course, you work in a sector that's particularly impacted by travel restrictions, given that you are so involved in travel and tourism. So when do you think that sector will see a genuine revival, or do you think the way we travel and visit other countries is going to change indefinitely?
I don't think travel is going to change indefinitely. I think it's going to be just uncertain how quickly we come through it. As I mentioned, I think Europe we can already see with the very heavy levels of vaccination. The United States with very heavy levels of vaccination, and even the UK are going to be emerging faster than anyone else. We're trying to say we need more vaccines, not more lockdowns. And it's all a question of how quickly can we vaccinate. And the focus within our company and within various locations where we operate is just get as many vaccines as possible and inject them as quickly as possible so that we can try to open up.
And we've seen, interestingly, in different countries around the world, real partnership between the private sector and government to be able to deliver vaccine programs, to be able to manage the pandemic. What role do you see for the private sector in terms of partnership with government going forward?
I think it's going to be very critical that we all work together. I think we have to have a common vision of how to tackle this crisis. And certainly one of the successful examples, I think, was the private sector and the public sector in the Maldives and how they've tried to manage that. Certainly the Middle East, Dubai especially, has been provided great leadership in this case. And we've seen that emerging faster from this crisis. So it's really a question of leadership, and the leadership has to come from both the private sector and the public sector. If anything, certainly in some countries we've seen the public sector has been very slow to source vaccines. Today, we have many countries such as Thailand, which are now opening up and administering vaccines even in shopping malls. So it's absolutely critical that there is close cooperation, and we can't rely only on the government. This is such a massive program of trying to vaccinate literally the whole world in the space of 12 to 24 months that it can't possibly be achieved without cooperation.
Absolutely. I want to take back to something you said earlier where you talked about encouraging your managers to be entrepreneurial. And while I was preparing to speak to you, I read that you actually started your first company just 50 years ago with a borrowed $1,200. So can you just give us some color for all the entrepreneurs out there, how you went from starting a company with borrowed $1,200 into who you are and what you've achieved today?
Well, I think the very first thing I would tell any entrepreneurs, budding entrepreneurs, be patient. It took us 50 years to get where we are today. Many people think we had an overnight success, but it was really a lot of hard work over many years. I think entrepreneurs have a habit of wanting to achieve a lot very quickly. But if they can temper that with that patience that I mentioned, I think they have a better chance of being successful. I haven't found any quick and easy ways to make money. Most of them require a great deal of patience and dedication and hard work. The harder I work, I find the luckier I get.
Yes, that's a great mantra for the working world, isn't it? And so when you think about identifying business opportunities, you're obviously in a particularly challenging sector at the moment. How do you identify business opportunities, and what's your growth mindset? Are you still trying to grow, or are you very satisfied with where you've got to?
No, I think that if you want to keep motivating a young workforce and young executives, you've got to keep growing. So growth is absolutely critical. However, when you run into the sort of difficulty that we've seen this year, we've had to literally freeze all acquisitions and everything else. Remember, we had just digested our biggest acquisition, which was NH Hotels in Europe, which was about 350 or 400 hotels that we acquired. And we spent about $3 billion on that just a year before this COVID crisis. So it was certainly a shock to us to find that we could lose money as quickly as we did with this huge portfolio of hotels. But that's not dissimilar from most of the other hotel and hospitality organizations. But having said that, we are sitting with still about $2 billion in cash. But we've taken the decision that we're not going to expend that on acquisitions or anything else until we can see this this tunnel is truly coming to an end, and that the light at the end of it is not moving further away. So we're very focused right now on just making sure we've have sufficient funds available to ride through this crisis, and in some countries it's going to be longer. We have seen in Europe, of course, a lot more support from the private sector from the public sector to the private sector. We haven't seen as much of that in Asia, I'm afraid, or at least not in Thailand. We're even seeing Social Security and other things being, literally running out of cash.
And so what government support do you think you'd like to see? Or, obviously, of course, you're an international operation. What general public support from government or from people do you think you'd need to see for successful growth, or not just of your company, but of all the companies that have been hit so hard?
I think Europe has been probably the most advanced in that. They provided funding to many of the hotel companies to survive this crisis, recognizing that we're also a huge employer. So if they can look after us, we can look after our employees. So that's been very helpful in Europe, we're going to have to look at various incentives to try to emerge from this crisis, such as we have in Thailand, for example, a 5-year tax moratorium. Well, the losses that we've mounted over the last 2 years of COVID will certainly take more than 3 or 4 years to recover. So I'm hoping that they will give a waiver and allow a carry forward tax loss of up to 10 years. Soft loans and other things will be very much needed by this industry, the hospitality industry, to try and come out of this and recover. This has also been a very good time for many that have to do renovations and prepare for the reopening, which in many countries we've seen there's even greater demand coming out of COVID. But the problem is, of course, while you're going through a crisis like this, many companies are reluctant to spend money, and especially when it's not clear what the public sector can give them to support the public sector in this endeavor.
And Bill, you've talked and shone a light, of course, on some of the challenges you face over the next 3 years. What do you see as the biggest opportunities for Minor Group over the next 3 to 5 years?
I think it's a return to norm. I truly believe that once we have got the world vaccinated, we will see a greater return to the norm that we used to know. I don't see us making very big changes in the hotels that we're building or designing. I think travel will return, sporting events and other things, but this won't happen until the success of the vaccinations has been truly absorbed by the population. We just have to get vaccinated. There's no easy way or quick way to achieve that other than making sure that everybody gets vaccinated.
Absolutely. You've previously said that you've got to think of the planet as your ultimate stakeholder, so you've got to look after it. How does this impact your business planning?
Well, it's very important. You know, we're so dependent on the assets of any given country. You know, whether it's the beaches in and the coral in the Maldives, or the national parks in Thailand, or any of the mountain resorts. So we have a huge responsibility to try to protect these areas, because otherwise we don't have a business. If we lose the some of the beauty and the that we have through a global warming situation or through anything else that's happening, we have to ensure that we're doing our best to fight it. And I'm proud of the work that not only our hotel group has done, but many other hotel groups, to try to improve this situation and protect the natural environment that we have, that's so conducive to travel and tourism.
And what are some of those measures you take for people who aren't involved in the sector? How is kind of your hotel work or restaurant work or brand work changed now compared to 10 or 15 years ago with regard to environmental concerns and sustainability?
There's a much greater awareness now of sustainability, and we find it's a double-edged sword, and it's certainly beneficial. From the one point, many of the young, incredibly talented people that we want to recruit don't want to just work for a company that's making a lot of money. They want to know what that company is doing for the environment, for the areas that they operate in, for the people. And so for us, it's absolutely critical to be focused on that sustainability, because that will help us to get better people. It also helps us to work more successfully in many of the marketplaces, whether it be in the northern part of Thailand, because we've got a tremendous program to help farmers and elephants, or it's in any of the cities in the Maldives where we have educational programs. It's absolutely critical that we have a huge role to play in helping the world be sustainable.
Absolutely. And you talked about young people, and there's been a lot of focus on millennials and Gen Z and how they want to change the way they choose their jobs and the way they work. And of course, we've seen big shifts culturally around the world, whether that's the Me Too movement or more focus on LGBT rights. How does that change the way you have to work in terms of creating a corporate culture or leading your group?
I don't think it changes so much, because it's got to be ingrained. We're very focused on trying to make sure that everyone in our organization adopts the same views that we have on sustainability, because only then can it be sustainable. If you're only dealing with top management or only a certain part of your corporate culture, it's just not sustainable. So we have many things that we do within our company to try to get this to be adopted throughout all levels of the company. And it's as small as we no longer encourage gift giving in our office for birthdays. We encourage everyone to go out and give back to the community on those days. The biggest event in our company probably is my birthday, which is celebrated by having our 80,000 workers around the world take a day off and work for their community, do something in charity. That's what I really want. And if we can do that, we can make a huge impact. And we operate already in 60 countries, and I would hope that we'll eventually operate in many more. So I hope that our positions and visions on sustainability will be able to be adopted by many other people.
Wow, I love that. What a brilliant way to celebrate your birthday. What did you do community-wise for your birthday and the last lockdown-free birthday?
We worked on things all over the world, including in the Middle East, whether it was for orphanages or handicapped people or charities, giving of blood. There's just so many things that were done when you've got 80,000 people on one day, all focused on trying to do something good for their communities. So I'm very proud of that.
Yeah, understandably, that sounds amazing. If only all our businesses could do that. And you manage an extensive portfolio that you've shed some light on. How do you balance the stress and challenge between work and having a healthy work-life balance?
Well, that's easy. I'm sitting right now in lockdown in Phuket, where I'm able to do a little bit of work, but we have such an incredible environment down here. I was able to get here by our private jet, since air traffic has been pretty well disrupted. But I try to balance it. I've always felt, and I've encouraged our staff, if you work hard, you want to play hard. So you've really got to have a balance to life. And I don't think anyone can include me or not say that I've tried to balance my life pretty effectively over the years.
Absolutely, I like that as a lot in terms of play hard too. And in terms of the work that you're doing around branding, what have you learned about how to successfully market and brand an organisation, especially one that's in such a competitive sector as yours?
Well, I think it's very important to be focused on your consumer. I think Anantara's success has really been trying to deliver an indigenous project. We're not a Thai hotel company. We're a company that tries to bring out the indigenous strengths of the various markets that we operate in. So the Anantara in the Middle East is very Emirati in its way of giving service and culture and the feeling within that hotel. Our hotels in Thailand, of course, are very Thai, but our hotels in Europe have a very European accent to them. So I think for us, we've tried to build a identity for Anantara that is global. In its view, it's not a Thai company that's trying to take its Thai practices around the world. It's a Thai company that's trying to bring out the best in each of the countries it operates in.
And do you have any plans for expansion in Saudi Arabia this year or in the coming years?
We're very excited about what's happening in Saudi Arabia. So we're very hopeful that we're going to be included in a couple of projects. We already have one or two projects on the boil, and we're very excited to see them come to fruition during this period. There's been a lot of positive things that have happened during COVID, and certainly many countries have stepped back and looked inwards at the importance of domestic tourism, because that's one of the few things that they could rely on during this crisis. Somebody like China has been able to actually come through this crisis stronger, and our hotels in China, our restaurants in China are now achieving revenues and sales and profits higher than they were before COVID. But there's not many countries that can afford what China has. They have a huge population base that can do that. In Thailand, which is one of the world's most popular destinations, we have too much infrastructure and too few domestic tourism to support the entire infrastructure. So we're very dependent on the rest of the world coming back to us. We can survive, but we can't prosper. So and right now it's just a matter of surviving and waiting for the world to open up again, and for borders to open up and allow travel other than domestic travel.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Bill. I would love to be able to talk to you forever. I know you've got so many more interesting insights, but just a one-sentence answer to the last question, please. How do you think leaders can ensure the overall well-being of their employees whilst ensuring maximum ROI?
Well, I think first, if you want the maximum ROI, you just got to focus on the employees. If you don't focus on your employees, there's no way you're going to survive. And especially we've seen it this time when really the question of getting vaccinated is a matter of survival. So our first focus is on our people, their safety and their well-being. And only if you're successful at that can you possibly hope that you're going to be profitable and sustainable.
Bill, thank you so much for your time today. I know the audience has enjoyed this conversation just as much as I have. If you enjoyed the session, if you've got any thoughts, please post it on our live social media wall with the hashtag ABLFcity. And of course, if you missed this session or any of the sessions from previous ABLF events, you can always come back right here and watch this session and all the other ones on demand anytime after today. So thank you very much, Bill. Thank you everybody for joining us today. And remember that we are back every month featuring global leaders in powerful conversations.